I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, and songwriter Luxxury, a.k.a. the guy who whispers about interpolation.
And this is One Song.
All right, today on One Song, we are going highbrow, we're going ethereal, and we're going electronic, with a song that marries two of my favorite artists of all time. And it's built around a simple drum loop, a harpsichord, and the voice of God herself.
And the vocals on it inspired one of the greatest what-if moments of 90s pop music. The song is Teardrop, and the group is Massive Attack.
Love is a verb, love is a doing word. Feel someone pray. Gentle.
All right, so we both have a lot to say about this song. I am super passionate about this. Not that I'm not passionate about every song
No,
we
but
do.
this is special.
This is a special
You know, a
one.
lot of times we're dealing with songs that everybody knows.
Yeah.
They're all over the radio. They're at your wedding. If you play this song at your wedding, I think you're really cool. It's not a wedding track song.
But
It's
people
not a
might
song
fall
that-
asleep and they might cry also. It could
We're
not.
not setting a. It's literally called. It's literally called Teardrop.
Yes.
It's not a song that you're going to necessarily know from the radio, but I think a lot of our listeners will know it.
Exactly. So before we get into it, I want to back up for a second and ask you, Diallo, why do you care about this song, and why should our audience care about it?
It's just a cool song. You know, I think that one of the reasons we do this show is because we want people to hear songs they've heard many times a new way. But another sort of secret goal is just to start a conversation about music and turn people on to stuff that maybe they haven't heard. Or if they have heard, they thought they were the only person who heard it. And now they're like, oh, yeah, you know, I do know this song. I've heard it in a movie, or I heard it when I was walking through a hotel lobby, something we're going to talk about a little bit later. You know, I heard it at the coffee shop when I was unemployed and looking for a job. You know, like wherever you come across your cool music, we want to be one of those places. And so we knew we had to do something about Massive Attack. I'm pretty sure the first time I heard this song was in a record store, ironically. You know, those,
I can't believe you said
wonderful bastions of music that no longer exist as much as they used to. Do you remember the first time you heard this song?
I'm kind of, yes, because it was also at a record store. So what record store were you at? And when
I was
where
probably,
was it?
gosh, man, I mean, given the year, I might have been at Tower, you know, might have been at Turtles in Atlanta.
Shout out to Turtles.
Shout out to Turtles. Shout out to Sam Goody in the Warehouse.
None
and
of
all
these
those,
places exist.
Oh, hell no. Right now, everybody
all
under the
long
age
gone.
of 30 is like, what language is this?
What is a record
store? It was
store?
probably a record store.
It was
What
a
about
record.
you?
It was at Other Music across the street from Tower
In
Records.
New York?
In New York,
Oh my gosh, I used to love Other Music.
Me too. That was my walk. I used to live on Christopher Street and walk across 4th to my workplace on Lafayette. So it's right there on Lafayette and 4th, and that was my either walking to or from work. I would sort of, you know, stop in, and I would constantly be bombarded with amazing new things. Almost, I feel like I would be the guy who walks in, finds out what they're playing and buys it. Like that's why they're doing it.
100%. You
so
would walk
many
up
times.
and you'd be like, hey, what song is this? And they would be annoyed. That movie High Fidelity nailed it. They'd be annoyed. They'd be like, oh God, it's Massive Attack. The name of the song is Teardrop.
They're obligated to be annoyed as record
It's on the
clerks.
application. Can you be annoyed by innocent questions? Okay, before we get into the song, there's a few things I want us to clarify. First off, musically, how do you classify this song?
Well, Teardrop is a slow electronica song, and we're about to get into a conversation here because in the moment it came out, 77 BPM. This is down tempo. This is like coming out of years this is years of disco and house music being in the 110s, 120s, even 130s. When you talk, you know, Sylvester's at 132, right? With "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real." Suddenly we have electronic music being made, and it's much slower. This is what was sometimes called down tempo. Sometimes the controversial term that we're about to get into, trip hop.
Trip hop.
So trip hop, just really quickly, what is trip hop? Trip hop means literally trippy hip hop. And I know Diallo has a lot of really interesting thoughts about that, so I'll let you get to that in a second. But just on the definitional tip, so it is slower music. It's usually very bass heavy. It doesn't have as much going on instrumentally. It's a lot simpler a lot of times. And it can feel, again, psychedelic is the reason why it's called trip, but then it's instrumental hip hop essentially. I know you've got a lot to say about that.
No, listen, I just want to put it in perspective because some of our listeners are you know, younger. And I do feel like the term trip hop was created so that, you know, basically a whole generation of white guys who really appreciated hip hop's beats, but didn't either didn't know rappers to give the beats to,
Right.
or actually felt like in some cases, I forget, was it DJ Shadow? Somebody said lyrics are too confining. You know, they were really like, I just like the music. So it's almost like, because I was a hip hop head at this time. When I found out there was a genre called trip hop, I was like, that just sounds like them trying to basically rope off their own area so they can
Call it what it
experiment
is,
with the
whitewash
beats.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
a
what
little
it is.
bit of a
There's
whitewash
a long history
going
of
on
like
there.
R&B becoming rock and roll when it becomes white.
Yeah,
it's the same
exactly.
thing.
It felt
We're
like-
just changing the name because of the different
Yeah.
color
And by
of the
way,
skin of people making it.
to that point, trip hop, I remember when hip hop, you couldn't play hip hop in certain spaces. Like hip hop was not being played in high end restaurants. It was not being played in hotel lobbies.
Right.
It was not being played in places other than like in movies where it was supposed to let you know that the neighborhood was bad. You might get shot in a few. Like it was that cliche.
Yeah.
But trip hop had a respectability.
Right.
And sort of like a cleanliness.
Oh, trip hop!
In the
This
eyes.
is the soundtrack of like like upscale
Absolutely.
Soho
if you went
shoe
to a
stores
mall, which to those
of the
younger
90s.
listeners, the mall was when you
But
would
like, no, the
actually walk
fancy-
into Amazon.com and make your purchase.
But this is the fancy malls too, right? It's the upscale.
Oh,
malls.
these were the upscale.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was the Beverly Center. This
Right.
was not Fox Hills Mall.
Right.
I'm getting really granular right now. Like every city has that black mall. You know, it's got
This
like.
podcast is just for LA residents.
If you're in Atlanta, think Greenbrier Mall versus
Okay.
Lenox Mall.
Okay.
Lenox Mall, Trip Hop, Greenbrier Mall.
Let's go through all the cities.
hip-hop.
What about San Francisco? Which mall would
Oh
it be?
man, you know what? We
Probably
could
the
do a whole
Westfields.
podcast on malls.
Formerly known as the Saramonte.
But I think that, yes, to a certain extent, I had a little bit of an aversion to the term trip hop that I didn't have to the music itself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, even before I got into TV and film, I liked music that felt cinematic.
Yeah.
You know, to me, the best
Right.
hip hop albums had, like, you would listen to them in your headphones, you know, and they would take you to a place.
Right.
And this music, whether you want to call it trip hop or as I call it, just electronica, it would send you to a place. And suddenly you were
Sure.
in a movie. I think someone described
It's very visual. It
very
evokes a
visual.
lot
Someone
of visuals.
described Portishead, I think, is like soundtrack to a movie that hasn't been made yet. You know, and I feel the same way about Massive Attack. There was something extremely cinematic. They felt like they were influenced just as much by Martin Scorsese as they were by Public Enemy.
We're gonna get into all that, and your distaste or aversion to, or our shared, I think, aversion to the term trip hop.
Just the term.
Just the term was shared by the band themselves, by Massive Attack. They prefer to call it either lovers hip hop was one term they came up with. I'm not
Love
sure if
that.
they said that as a joke, but like they definitely didn't like trip hop. I think possibly for some of the reasons that you mentioned, and it's important to mention. We're about to get into the story of the band.
Yeah.
But this is not unlike Portishead, which is a bunch of white dudes, and we love Portishead.
We love him.
And Beth Gibbons on vocals.
Beth Gibbons. Kendrick Lamar loves Beth Gibbons. She showed up on his latest album.
This is a multiracial band. Let's not
yeah,
forget.
yeah. No, totally. Listen, set the scene for us. Massive Attack. Who are they and where do they come from?
Excellent question, and I'm glad you asked it. The scene is being set. It's Bristol, a small town in the UK, in southwest UK near Wales. It's very isolated. It's not London, Manchester, Liverpool. It's kind of in its own little area. 500,000 people, and this is really
Wow,
unimportant.
that's not a lot.
It's the least important thing we're going to do all week, but it's this new word that I've learned, demonym.
And you're excited about this.
What do you think someone from Bristol is known as?
Oh God, it's
It's not like a weird one, but I just
it's not. I like the weird ones. Like I wanted to be Bristolian or something.
You're right. That's it.
No way.
It's Bristolian. So now
got
we
it
all
right.
know. Now we all know what a demonym is, and specifically, if you're from Bristol, you're a Bristolian.
Who knew that? Okay.
So here's the story. We start in Bristol, where a lot of immigrants from the West Indies after World War II come because when the Blitz hits England, there's a lot of labor shortages. So
Right.
they're like, anyone from the British Empire will pay your way to come to England and help
right,
us
because their
rebuild the
own
nation.
male population, you know, because they
Yes.
were only hiring men back then, is messed up.
And they
But-
didn't have enough. So this is called
Yeah.
the Windrush generation because one ship is called the Windrush from the Caribbean, from the West
Mm-hmm.
Indies, brings a whole bunch of immigrants from the West Indies.
Jamaica,
Barbados,
yeah.
etc. So that's the bedrock of this story because
Mm-hmm.
when a lot of them come to Bristol and they bring their culture with them, which includes sound system culture.
Yeah.
So you know that I'm a huge obsessive Jamaican reggae and dub fan.
Lee Scratch Perry.
So excited I finally get to kind of bring it into one of these episodes. Sound system culture.
You just did your hands like olive oil when she loves Popeye, which I think is hilarious. But keep going. to our younger listeners, that's a cartoon. Keep going.
That's how delighted I am.
You are super delighted.
I've never been more
Shout out to
delighted.
Delight. Groove is in the heart. Let's keep going.
I'm filled with delight and glee
Yeah.
to talk about sound system culture. Now, for those of you who don't know, in Jamaica in the 50s and 60s, sound systems, bands were not a big thing. The beginnings of DJ culture really begin in Jamaica. And to make a very long story short, and hopefully we'll have many more episodes later
To talk
go
about
deep,
the Jamaican sound
talk
systems.
about Jamaican
Yeah.
sound systems. It really is culturally the product of Jamaica that we have the idea of DJing in open air spaces with lots of
Yep.
people and giant bass rigs that are constructed by the people themselves. It's before there was
I mean,
punk.
they're
making
they're
it
attached
themselves.
to cars essentially. Like you're just
It's incredible.
You drive a van or a truck around.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right. And these people are building, the Jamaicans are building their own sound systems from discarded, stereo parts. So this tradition is brought to Bristol because of these immigrants who bring their music and the way their music is presented with them. So we have these open air street parties. There's one famous one called St. Paul's Carnival. It's multiracial. Use that word again twice in 19 episodes. Wow.
I'm watching you.
The reason why that's relevant is because there had been racial strife, and then there's one incident where it was. I'm not
Well,
gonna go down
because
that
it's
path.
because there's racial strife because they brought in all these people to essentially rebuild after World War II, and then once the buildings are there, they're like, we'd prefer if you guys just go back home. You're making Britain look a lot less like Britain.
Yeah.
And they started deporting people. I think it was like this big scandal. They started
That's right.
deporting a lot of people.
Well, I think that was only recently reported, right? That had been happening all this time.
Yeah.
But back in Bristol, there was a single incident where I believe the cops burned down a club, and there's such an uprising against the cops from it that they stopped. That's like the end. I'm not going to say the end of police brutality in Bristol, but that was the police started to turn a blind eye basically to these festivals. They're like, you know what? We're hands off. We heard you guys. We're going to leave you be. And it's because of that.
Old Bill was like, I've had enough.
And because of that, sound system culture thrives in Bristol in the early 80s, which gives the chance for black and white kids to bring their Jamaican music and their punk music together in a new way. And disco music and funk, it's all coming together in a really special way. And these open air festivals open to everyone of all ages. It's really important that it's not in a nightclub. It's not just adults, it's parents and kids. It's a very community feeling.
And this is something I think is one of the reasons why we're covering Mass Attack. It's one of the main themes that I think I take away from not just this song, but a lot of songs that we cover on this show. Anytime you have cross-pollination in cultures, you end up with cool stuff. Like I think about
And new
Atlanta.
stuff. Cool and very new.
Cool new stuff.
Yeah.
I think about the city I'm from, Atlanta. Growing up, we didn't have a ton of rappers from Atlanta, but we were getting all the stuff from New York. We were getting all the stuff from LA. We were even getting like the Luther Campbell sound from Miami. And eventually we ended up with Outkast and Goody Mob.
Nothing
and then eventually
sounded like
we got T.I. and Ludacris. And then
it's
eventually
all of the influences, but synthesized in a completely unique and new way.
And you think about New York, where, in downtown Manhattan, they were getting rap from the Bronx. They were getting, disco and punk. And like it all came together to create this stew. And I think what you're saying is that Bristol was, it had a lot of Jamaican and Barbadian. That's another, what is it? What's the word?
Oh, damn, I already forgot. Demonym.
You had, they were bringing the sound system. They were bringing the reggae. I think that punk and reggae have kind of gone, I don't want to say hand in hand, but because reggae has just as big an influence on hip hop, obviously. But like when you listen to early, like The Police, and you listen to, which, we can argue the Police are not punk, but I guess what I'm saying is that there was a lot of reggae and a lot of punk mixing in the UK. And then because these guys in this particular group, which blows up in the 90s, they're also listening to, 80s New York hip hop, and they're putting that influence in.
Exactly right. We're about to get into
something new.
You're exactly right. We're about to get into that in a really big way. Just one last sort of quality that comes out of this Jamaican connection specifically is bass. So the advent of bass as a phenomenon as we know it today, we really have to thank these DIY sound systems in the 50s and 60s, because the idea of replicating bass requires large speakers that are
you got to push a
strung
lot of air
together.
through.
You have to push a lot of air. It's a physicality that prior to Jamaica, you couldn't really hear it. If you were playing music outside, you wouldn't hear any bass. So it was to solve a problem, to be able to replicate these sounds that they had recorded that they liked the bass part of. They innovated these do-it-yourself systems that evolved and improved upon themselves. And that becomes what we sort of take for granted when we go to a nightclub now, anything bass related. We really have to thank Jamaica for bringing that into both the replication in a live space, but also on recording. Hugely relevant as we get into the Massive
We just
Attack
want to
story.
say thank you, Jamaica.
Thank you, Jamaica.
Thank you, Jamaica. So I want to move forward to the making of Teardrop. The process of DJs writing music. We all know that it's different than what you'll find with traditional singer-songwriters. Let's talk about that.
I love this topic because I have learned, I come from an instrument, playing background. I started on drums and I taught myself a little guitar, blah, blah, blah. So I have a little music theory, a little piano lessons in my background, right? So I definitely come from a musician background, and I have worked with people who come from a DJ background, and what I've been blown away by is how it's not the disadvantage in the way that you might think it is when you're like in theory. Actually, DJs who come to the table in the songwriting process bring a deep knowledge of what people respond to, first and
thanks,
foremost.
Man. Thank you so much.
1000% you who I'm talking about over there, Diallo, with whom I've written songs.
Yeah.
It starts with the DJ knowledge is a very specific kind of knowledge. It's an understanding of, even if it's intuitive, even if the next step is getting the language for it, it's an intuitive sense of what's going to work, what's going to clear the dance floor, what's going to go to peak hour. And it's also about taste. It's also about recognizing what's cool, what's been done too many times. So there's all these specific things that I think, and obviously want to hear your perspective because you are the DJ in question here, that is a different way of approaching how to write music. So what, as a DJ...
I'm reminded of the LCD Sound System song. He's like, you thrown away your keyboards and bought turntables. You thrown away your turntables and bought keyboards.
That's it. You're going back and
I
forth.
think about Massive Attack because this is a group that basically starts off doing a lot of sampling, because they're essentially like DJs, like me.
And that's the third element is the resourceefulness. If you don't know how to make a sound, you find the sound and you use the sound by any means necessary.
I don't know if you remember this, the first time I came over to your house, I've said many times, public schools failed me. I don't know how to play any instrument that requires notes, but I do know how to drum and I do know how to DJ. First time I came to your house to work on music, I pulled out my laptop and I turned on Serato, which is like the go-to DJ application. And I was literally like, so it sounds a little bit like this. And I started pushing buttons.
Yeah.
But then it sounds like I pull up another song, but then it's got a part that sounds like this.
Yes.
And I would play that part. And I was like, can we make something that sounds like that?
and you just know that we're about to get into the Wild Bunch, which is the name of the Massive Attack's embryonic sound system. But you just know that they were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And maybe they landed on, hey, why don't we what you just did just use that, sample that, because that sounded what I want to hear. Let's just take that.
Now, you just mentioned the Wild Bunch. As I understand it, the Wild Bunch is a bunch of these people out of what they call the Bristol scene.
And they're wild. Yes.
Well, they're named after that movie from the 60s, right?
They're named after a Sam Peckinpah movie, but I think it might have also been a play on one of their favorite movies, which was...
Wild Style. Yes, this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's
if you
so
ever
good.
want to get a real sense of what early 80s hip-hop was, you can get almost nothing more
1983
authentic
Bronx. Yep, there it
than...
is.
Yeah, South Bronx. Nothing more authentic than the movie Wild Style, directed by a guy named Charlie Ahern. Music by Chris Stein of Blondie.
Yep.
There's a famous song in there called Subway Rap, which serves as
let's play it. I had it queued up.
Which
let's
serves
listen
as
to
the
it.
bed of the, for those who may not know it, if you ever heard Nas's Illmatic, it's the first song you hear in Illmatic. Play us a little bit of that.
This. I love how punk rock that is too. I think that's
but they didn't consider it. I mean, like, it has punk influences, but they consider this b-boy stuff. That's what's crazy.
But it's so wonky,
it's completely like
bass. I think that's Chris Stein.
They
on
don't
bass
use a snare; they use a snap. You hear that snap? They don't use.
I think they're layering it with a snare.
I think it's as I was told to me.
Okay.
It was several snaps layered in. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So like it's not just one snap. I only bring it up just to say that
so good.
It's got one of the greatest moments of unintentional brilliance. There's a stick-up scene where they actually use some guys on set who just rolled up on the set. And sometimes when you're filming, there will be people who just roll up to set. And they were like, hey, can we play like the stick-up kids? And they were like, yeah, sure. It turned out they actually had a weapon. And they were like, we're going to use this weapon in the scene. And when he says, there's a famous scene where he says, you heard it on the radio, you seen it on the TV show. And the other one says, A to the K, and he pulls out the gun and he says, A to the motherfucking Z. And No, this is not in the script. They told the director, this is just some cool stuff we thought we'd say before we robbed somebody. And it made the cut. It made it into the movie. It seems so authentic. Yeah, Wild Style, amazing movie. So yes, Wild Bunch, obviously the Sam Peckinpah movie from the 60s, but Wild Style, a movie and, if you will, a movement that had a big effect on the members of Massive Attack.
I was just going to play, so we have it, the Illmatic song that samples. This is the Genesis by Nas.
And you can hear he slowed it way down.
Queasier.
So who actually is in the Wild Bunch?
All right, so the Wild Bunch sound system consisted of Robert Del Naya, who's 3D.
That's Massive Attack.
We got Grant Marshall, goes by Daddy G.
Massive Attack.
We got Andrew Vowles, goes by Mushroom.
Mushrooms, Massive Attack.
And there are a couple other founding members. Milo Johnson gets a lot of credit for being among maybe even the first who I think his being the kind of kingpin DJ of the sound system is what led to, I think, Robert Del Naya joining later. Nellie Hooper, importantly, is an early member who goes on to produce Madonna and Bjork, among other people. And we have, not unimportantly, Adrian Thaws, a.k.a. Tricky, who's a bit, especially those first couple records, like the Silent
Tricky's
Fourth
in the
member.
Massive Attack family.
Yeah, he's in the Massive Attack family, exactly right. So these guys
And by the way, Nellie Hooper, I mean, like, and it totally makes sense to me that the person who worked on the Bjork albums, those early 90s Bjork albums, was also in the scene because, you know, albums like Debut and Post, like, there are very electronica / trip hop songs on those albums.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so these guys get together, they throw these sound systems, and these are like full on combining elements of West Indian, like Jamaican culture. We've got the big, it's a DJ party outdoors at festivals,
I know.
all ages. And the music being played is a combination of punk and reggae. It's the Clash. It's American hip hop. So they're bringing in elements from Jamaica. They're bringing in elements from New York and hip hop. And they are also b-boying and spray painting and graffitiing. Like they're bringing in all of the, this is absolutely hip hop, but it's Bristol style with Jamaican influence. It's an
such
incredible
a scene.
mix.
It's
a
like,
scene.
I always wonder, like, where are the scenes today? Like
Yes, we talk about that
post-pandemic,
a lot, yeah.
I'm always looking for the scenes. I think it was,
This
you
sounds
told
like a
me,
really fun
David
scene.
Byrne was like, to have a scene, you have to have, you know, basically free alcohol for the for the kids who are going to be making the music.
Right.
You have to give them a safe place, and I think a sound system would help. Maybe you and I should start a sound system.
We
We'll
should
buy
start
a
a
food
sound
truck.
system.
We'll put a whole bunch of speakers on it, and then we'll just drive around. Like we'll drive down Sunset. Maybe we'll start at like Sunset in Hollywood and like where it meets near Silver Lake, and we'll just drive east towards downtown.
I'm free Monday. Let's do this.
Let's figure that out.
All
We're
right,
gonna start a sound system.
One song sound system sounds really dope too, actually. I like that.
Sounds like some hooligans to me.
So they're getting mixtapes from America before London does. And it's important to note that Robert Del Naya, a.k.a. 3D, we'll call him 3D from this point forward.
Yeah.
He is one of the first graffiti artists in Bristol. He pioneers that stencil graffiti that you've seen a million times. And by the way, he's rumored to be Banksy. Now this,
I think he denied that, right?
he's denied it, but that doesn't make him not Banksy.
Because Banksy would fess up. If you are you Banksy? Oh, fine.
But I've seen footage
You
of
caught
him.
me.
I've seen, if you see, there's on YouTube, you can go see footage of some of these early sound system parties
Mm-hmm.
in Bristol, and you see him spray painting, and it's that Banksy style with the stencils where they've clearly just printed out a photograph.
So
and-
he's either lying,
Yeah.
or Banksy's a freaking hack.
yeah. But there's all these like people on the internet have like tracked like Banksy, a new Banksy showed up in a town that like Massive Attack
It was just
played
in?
Right.
Insane.
Yeah. So we don't know. We don't know. We're not confirming or denying, but we
Right.
are throwing it out
But
there.
Banksy, if you want to come on one song, the invitation is there.
So we talked about the DJ approach to songwriting. This band, this group of people gradually starts to put together their first musical piece. It happens to be the first single by Massive Attack before they're called Massive Attack is called The Look of Love, and it's by the Wild Bunch Sound System. And it's a Dusty Springfield cover. I'm going to play a little bit for you. That's the next thing. And the reason why this is relevant to our conversation about the DJ approach to songwriting is that it's literally just that. It's just a break beat, which might be a drum machine. It might be a combination of a loop from a record. And then Sharon Nelson, who goes on to perform on Blue Lines, their first record, is singing on top somebody else's song composition. So they don't know how to play instruments other than Cher, who's an incredible singer, but they're like, we want to make a song. Let's just grab what we can grab. We don't know how to write anything, so we're going to use a cover. We don't know how to make anything melodically, so we won't have any instruments. So just a drum beat and this girl who sings incredibly well.
Which to me is totally legit
Yeah, me too.
music making.
So the Wild Bunch ends up splintering, and 3D, Mushroom, and Daddy G become Massive Attack. And in part, they're inspired to do this by Nena Cherry. Shout out to Nena, who Buffalo Stance, one of my favorite underrated gems of the late 80s. She took them under her wing, basically. And
She
they were
gave
like,
them some financial support.
they were like, you guys are really talented, but you need to finish what you start. So she brings them into her house, and they're in her baby's room starting to make what becomes one of the greatest electronic albums,
Yes.
if not albums of all time. And I know you've got a lot to say about this. It's called Blue Line.
Yes.
We both adore this record. Did you want to
Yeah, well,
talk
I think
about it?
that, you know, it's such an important record. It's got Be Thankful for What You've Got and Safe from Harm and so many songs that we don't have time on today's podcast, but go listen to Blue Lines. You will recognize so many songs. If you were at all alive in the 90s, you'll recognize so many songs.
Yes.
And some of you didn't know that those were Massive Attack songs. And I'm going to play a clip of a song off the album called Unfinished Sympathy, called by some critics one of the first truly great dance songs. It was an anthem for this new sort of multicultural Britain that, you know, these kids had come up in. And here's a clip of that. Man, that song still gives me chills. It's just a masterful dance record. If you listen to Blue Lines now, like, you hear like soul music, dance music, basically what is, you know, British hip hop. Like, you hear from that era, like, you hear so many things. But by the third album, things in the 90s have gotten dark. And we come to the album Mezzanine, which is an absolute classic, but is also going to help tear this band apart. And on this album, we have the song that we're talking about today, which is Teardrop. Where would you like to start? We have the stems on Teardrop. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with the drums. And this is going to be one of the quickest stems we've ever done because the elements that are there are very sparse and they're very looped, which is to say that across the duration of the song.
Are they live? Is this a drum or a sample?
So the drum beat is a sample. Let me play it for you first in the mix.
Ooh, what's
and now
the sample?
you're going to laugh a little bit when you hear the sample because you know
dying.
you just kind of heard it.
I don't think I did. I'm going to guess it's something slowed down. Oh, wow. It's actually something sped up. I would not have guessed that.
This is Les McCann. It's called Sometimes I Cry from 1973. And you're right. They just took that one loop, that one beat, and they looped it through the song. They added another second kick underneath it. Boom,
Play us
boom,
just a
boom,
little
cat.
bit of Les McCann's, just like a meaty part of the song, just so we get a sense of where that beat comes in. Woo!
Smooth. Got that Rhodes in there. Got that 1973.
I think,
Anything from 1973.
I think everything from 1973 sounded amazing.
There's nothing bad that came out in 1973.
Well,
So smooth. Les McCann. So that gets looped, and there's a second kick drum added to make the beat slightly different. That boom, 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 ka.
nice.
So there's your beat. And then before we get into the next section, let me back up and say that there was kind of a silent fourth member who joins the band at this point, and that's Neil Davidge, the producer. And he becomes somebody in their circle who actually can play instruments. So one day, the story goes,
We won't hold it against him.
he adds a harpsichord part, which I'll play for you in a second.
Oh, wow.
This comes out of the fact that Mushroom was in the studio. One day he walks in, and Neil just happened to be messing around, and he comes and he plays this part. And Mushroom's like, "Whoa, stop right there! I love this." And here's what he heard.
I love it.
And once again, that's another element that just goes through the entire 6.5 minute duration of this song.
It's so
never changing.
It's so dark and wonderful.
It's dark and wonderful. So the next thing I want to play for you, Diallo, are you ready for this? We were talking about bass and the importance of bass to Jamaican culture and dub. It's really important to set that up when I play for you the stem, because what you're going to hear might seem sort of simplistic or insignificant, borderline insignificant, but this is the bass line. Once again, going through
Not
the
sure I've
entire
ever
song.
heard that before.
And it does have a sub in the mix, meaning there's another part that doubles it. But essentially, that on giant speakers is devastating, you know? And sometimes when you hear isolated stems like this, that context doesn't really come through.
Yeah.
But this is one of those albums, and this band, and possibly this entire genre, is designed, as we now know, for sound systems and for bass to come through and destroy your emotional state. So this is actually a bass
Or
line
lift you up.
that, in spite of its simplicity, is incredibly powerful in the context of the song.
There's also like a piano in here, right?
Yeah, let's listen to that. And it's layered with this Leslie,
Woo.
which is that sound. I'll just isolate that. You hear that in the background? Those things are on top of each other.
Yeah.
And that Leslie is a kind of speaker that rotates and that gives it that kind of oldie,
Yeah.
you kind of Beatles feel to it, in fact.
Oh no,
The
I
Beatles
like
use
it.
that a lot.
It's sort of an oldie sound. By the way, if they didn't have that fourth piano note in there, I think we would all just die. Like that third note is so dark.
Yeah.
Dun. Like, I mean, like, I'm glad they gave us the dun. Like, it's almost like, hey, but the sun's gonna come back up, you guys. Like
The minimalism, each of those notes has its own emotion. You're dead right.
every single note there has a personality. That third note is an absolute killer, and I mean that actually in the best way. I often say that, like, I think the through line of some of my absolute favorite hip hop songs of all time, from Ill Street Blues by Kool G Rap to New York State of Mind by Nas, is chunky piano. I'll even call it chunky piano.
If you're a listener of the show, you know what that is.
That's the way.
Callback.
Drinking game. Do your shots, chunky. But I think that there's something about like a rich piano that, like, there's just texture and there's depth there that, like, very few other instruments can tackle. Also, one other thing I'm noticing there.
Yeah.
One other thing I'm noticing is the scratchiness. Can you say something about where does that scratchiness come from?
Well, the scratchiness literally comes from the sample, because they're literally taking the record, the vinyl record, which has aged from 1973 to 1998. So it's a 20-plus-year-old record. And they're recording it into their sampler in order to use
analog.
it. And it comes warts and all. And that includes the actual
red and white chord
crackle, the vinyl sound of the vinyl. That's a 20-year-old piece of vinyl, which, of course, aesthetically adds and contributes to the darkness and the melancholiness of the song. It gives us this sort of oldness, this kind of mustiness.
I love it.
And that's intentional. There isn't a goal to clean it up, to make it sound pristine.
To quote Mrs. Potato Head from the Toy Story movies, it's dark and dusty.
And let me just recap everything you've just heard. There's not a lot of things I just played for you, but that, for the first minute or so of the song, is all you're getting. And here's what it sounds like, just to remind you in the mix. Listen to how full and rich that is. You don't need much more.
But you know what's crazy is this was that one time where I feel like the bass is really not the standout instrument. Like, you played that bass part.
Yeah.
I had never heard it before, and I'm still not really hearing it. It's there. It's
You're
something
feeling
intangible.
it, though.
Maybe
You're feeling
but
it.
I am feeling the harpsichord, and I am feeling the piano. Those are the things that are working in those are the superstars.
Well, we talked about riffs on another episode. This is the episode we're going to make you go back and listen to all the other episodes you missed. So go back to the Superstition episode if you missed it. But we talked about riffs. This is not really a bass riff per se. You don't walk away from the song thinking about the bass line. You may never actually notice it, to your point. You are absolutely feeling it, though, in your body as you experience the song, because it is providing the bedrock, some of the emotional bedrock, I would say. I think the drums with the scratchy vinyl vibe, plus that simple bass line, which is really rich, that combines to create this bedrock, which is very dark and melancholy and vibey.
Wow. I mean, it's so cinematic. I absolutely love it. Before you go throwing another teardrop on the fire, we will be getting deeper into Teardrop by Massive Attack. That's after the break. We'll be right back. Okay, so back to the topic of today's show, Teardrop by Massive Attack. Luxury, tell us how Massive Attack accomplishes atmosphere in the song.
Well, we talked a little bit about before when we were listening to the drum beat and the sample. We have just the crackle noise of the vinyl adds a little bit because all of the instruments and all the parts they're playing are very simple. So one way to achieve just listener interest across the song, besides the vocals, which we're about to get to, is there's lots of little just interesting sounds and interesting just moments that come and go. So I'm going to play a few of those for you. And when you hear them isolated, you may not even notice them or recognize them. And then in the mix, it'll become the thing that as you listen to the song from here on out for the rest of your natural life, you will never unhear, oh, that's that thing where they did that thing. One that's really a particular interest to me, I'm not positive what it is, but my speculation, because it shows up in the stems, it's called plug one. I literally think this might be, and because I own, I'm a producer, I think this is the sound of a cable from like a guitar being plugged in and taken out again with lots of distortion and delay and effects added to it.
It's not a member of De La Soul.
It could be plug one, could be plug two. It's not plug three anymore. R.I.P. True Goy.
Talk about going dark.
Dark song.
Let's hear plug one.
Now, when I play that for you in the mix, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's that thing that does that thing.
You think that's a plug?
Listen to it. Literally the beginning of the song is this sound. And again, this is speculation, but if you listen to it carefully and in your mind, you've got the image of, a guitar, someone unplugs the cable from it. It makes noise because it's electrified in that moment if it's still plugged into the amp.
Yeah.
So if you take that electrified plug and you plug it back into the guitar, the moment before it's fully plugged in, it makes a sound, which is a little to my ears like this. I could be dead wrong, but that's what
3D,
I'm going.
Daddy G,
I'm going.
mushrooms. Feel free to email or comment.
Either
and
way,
tell us if we're way off or way on.
Either way, what it is one moment that happens a handful of times throughout the song. There's a few more little sounds like that. Here's another one. Now this one shows up. It's called Hammond. So I'm pretty sure this is a Hammond organ. A Hammond organ. And here's what it sounds like. Not from Oregon, but
a Hammond. Organ.
I don't know why I said Oregon. Here's a Hammond organ. Right?
Yeah, that's a.
Do you
Hammond.
recognize that song? And it's almost non-pitch, like there isn't much of a clarity of what that pitch is. It's more of like if you just bash a Hammond organ rhythmically, and you'll see a lot of like passionate keyboard players, like organ players will do that. And here it is in the mix. So again, next time you hear the song around the 2-minute mark, you'll hear this. Right? Little moments like that pepper up a pretty sparse arrangement.
Did not really catch that one either. There's all kinds of little things going on.
I'll play you one more fun little moment, little sound that just shows up. It's called Nord beep. Here's the Nord beep. And that's it.
I mean, Nord being probably a keyboard, right?
Nord is a gorgeous, very expensive keyboard. And now I'll play that one for you in the mix. This one's maybe a little bit more noticeable. So all of these things combine, and there is a string patch and there's some more synths, but basically what we have, musically speaking, is a very sparse bed of atmospheric sounds. And just, the bass loop is simple, the drum loop is simple. All of this is engineered to make the vocal shine all the more.
Yeah.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, at long last, the vocals of Miss Elizabeth Fraser from Cocteau Twins, sometimes known as the voice of God.
Love is a verb, love is a doing word. Feel the summer breath.
I don't know about you, man, but
wow. You know what? I never knew those lyrics before, and I still don't know what the song is about. That's a feat.
We're gonna try and break that down in a moment, but I mean, just from a ears and spine tingling standpoint.
And I think that what the '90s had that it's still a thing, but it's different now. There was like a sort of I think about Elizabeth Fraser. I think about Beth Gibbons. I think about Bjork. Coming out of the Sugar Cubes. Like there was a '90s vocalist that you don't hear those kind of vocals anymore. That is some really, really icy stuff. I think it's it's amazing.
This is I don't know if technically you'd call it crooning, but the type of singing she's doing. She's
Is
not
it singing in cursive?
She's not singing in cursive. We'll talk about that on another episode. But she's not belting it.
She's not belting it.
This is in fact, if you are singing this way as she is in a live setting, it's very difficult to hear. Like, so the live performances of her, you can tell that they boosted her.
Of course,
it's basically a speaking voice.
Yeah, she's like
way of singing.
speaking, almost whispering.
Very intimate.
But it's very icy and cold in a good way. Luxxury, tell us the backstory behind this truly haunting vocal performance and the lyrics.
Well, Elizabeth Fraser is in one of my favorite bands, Cocteau Twins, or I should say was, and in fact was married to...
Love the Cocteau Twins.
Love the Cocteau Twins. If you haven't already absorbed their catalog, maybe start with Heaven or Las Vegas. She's famous for not singing in English.
That's interesting. You go to that one. My favorite album is Garland's.
Just as an intro, I was going to say, for new listeners, because their first few records don't have... She's singing in essentially a gibberish or a made-up language, and Heaven or Las Vegas is one of the first records that I think is accessible to a new listener.
My friend, I actually think Garland's is a little bit more upbeat tempo wise.
Okay.
So I'll admit my favorite song by them is Wax and Wane.
Okay.
So like there's just a part of me that's like, we've bonded on post punk before. So tempo wise, I think if you're looking for something a little more upbeat, Garland's, but if you're looking for Elizabeth's vocals at the forefront, let's do Heaven or Las Vegas.
I mean, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, just call me at luxury.com and because we can talk about this all day and all night. Every song from every album has its own sort of feeling. So I'm such a fanboy for Cocteau Twins and specifically for Elizabeth Fraser. The existence of her on a song with Massive Attack, these two titans of my favorite music makers coming together is such a pleasure.
There you go.
But she is often referred to as the voice of God. This is something that a writer for Melody Maker once said, and it sort of stuck amongst a certain group of us.
I know some of our listeners are like, voice of God, man, I didn't come here for this. Don't try to convert me.
So when the Cocteau Twins end acrimoniously, because she's with Robin Guthrie, the writing partner and guitar player and mastermind behind that band, the two of them are married, they have a child, and then things end. But she goes on to briefly date the incredible singer Jeff Buckley, son of another incredible singer, Tim Buckley. And when he passes away, it's May 29th, 1997, and he's 29, and he drowns tragically in the Mississippi River. And she finds out about his disappearance in the middle of her writing the lyrics to this song. And she seems to feel there's sort of a chill that goes down her spine as she learns of his disappearance in the middle of what this song was about, sort of emerging from her vocal melodies and her lyrics. It connected in a way that she found very chilling. She ends up saying, I got letters out. I was thinking about him. That song's kind of about him. That's how it feels to me anyway. So there's a connection that she feels to her relationship with Jeff Buckley, who passed away right in the middle of the song.
Wow, I never knew that. Now, Elizabeth Fraser wasn't the only singer that was sort of in the running to sing this song.
That's right.
It's one of the greatest what-ifs of 90s music. Tell us about it.
Well, if you'll recall at the top of when we were discussing the song's origins, we have it beginning with the harpsichord and with Mushroom laying down a beat.
Yeah.
And so once they had this germ of an idea, the producer, Neil, continues to work on it separately with 3D, and the two of them send it to Elizabeth Fraser because they adore her vocal and they think it'd be perfect for it.
But Mushroom was not that excited about it, right?
Mushroom is not excited about that at all. And he actually removes his beats. He takes off the recording, his percussion track. And then when Neil and 3D return to the studio, it's gone. So they have to replace it. They have to collage their recording, their demo, with drums and percussion, which they borrow from another track they're working on. They actually bring in the engineer Dave Jenkins, who plays the piano, which we just heard. Like, that's on the final recording.
Yeah.
So there's a splitting. There's kind of a papal schism going on for this song, where we've got one version over here that is being worked on and is the completed version with Elizabeth Fraser from Cocteau Twins. But there's this second version that makes its way across the pond. And one day they get an email or a call. Communication comes in basically from Madonna's management saying she loves the song and she can't wait to finish it.
And this is Madonna during her Ray of Light period.
This is Madonna Louise Ciccone at her finest, at her height. Well, actually, you're right. When is 1998? Is that Ray of Light?
She's experimenting with stuff that's sort of like left field pop.
Right.
Like the Ray of Light album,
which
was
is one of my favorites.
Pretty experimental by Madonna standards.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great record.
That's so crazy. I mean, Madonna during the Ray of Light era. How do you think it would have gone down if Madonna had?
I mean, it would have
that?
been a completely different song. I don't even know what they have in common in terms of like vocal styles.
Would
or
it have been
registers.
completely different? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it would have, because I think that, I guess it would have. I guess it would be a completely different song. It's just like I've heard the version of "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" by Kendrick Lamar that has the original Lady Gaga vocals singing the hook.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, that's the thing.
Wow.
And at some point, Kendrick was just like, "No, I'm gonna have this other person sing," and it truly makes it a
Is it
Kendrick
different?
song. It's the exact same notes and everything, but it's Lady Gaga singing.
But does it feel like a completely different song? You understand why they didn't use it?
I think it would have absolutely still worked, but I've had more than a few Kendrick fans when I played it for him be like, "Nah, I like what he ended up going with."
Okay.
So
they made the right choice.
No diss to Gaga, but I like what that song ended up being. But here's the thing: if Madonna sings it, it's not as icy. It's not as the song we think of now as Teardrop.
I
like,
love
to me,
Madonna, but she's not an emotional singer to me. Like I don't get the.
It might have sounded more polished and more pop.
Like Elizabeth Fraser opens her mouth and I'm in tears and I'm a puddle on the ground. Like,
but by the way, I also understand where Mushroom's coming from, because it's tough when you want to. I feel like I know where Mushroom wanted to go. Like he wanted to probably segue into more DJ stuff and more.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, 3D. Clearly, like just bringing more instruments and more like he's going in a more band direction.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
In fact, I know that Mushroom leaves the group around this album. 2 years later, Daddy G, the other black guy in the group, leaves the group, and then it's just 3D, and he puts out an album. I think it's 100 Windows, which a lot of sort of a divisive album in the pantheon for.
It doesn't quite fit in the same way. It's a good record, but it's all live instruments. He wants to move away from DJing and sampling, and not 100%, but it's certainly a big change from the first three.
Yeah. I remember when Daddy G came back, I was actually DJing by that point, and I remember the big quote was, "I'm bringing the black back to Massive Attack."
Well, that is a wonderful rhyming sentence, and I'm very impressed by it.
By his rhyming skills. I mean, so that's a pretty big, what if hanging over the song. Only. What if Madonna had sang it?
It would have certainly been interesting. Yeah, I would have loved to have heard it.
Well, that's what's funny. It doesn't have to be just an interesting what if anymore. Through the fantastic use of computers.
Don't tell me.
Yeah, somebody suggested we use artificial intelligence. I know this is going to be a very controversial thing that we're going to do.
It almost feels mandatory to try.
Oh, I know, but I hate it already. We used artificial intelligence to make it,
and we are so sorry in advance.
To create, I know, I hate
but
myself.
But think of it as a learning moment, a healing learning moment.
Through the use of copywritten material. We are going to find out now, what does it sound like when Madonna sings Teardrop. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
I hate this so much.
I mean, AI nailed it. That sounds just like Madonna if she didn't speak English.
The robots are not taking over this week. That's
Wait,
for
before we move on, I kind of want to hear. Let's see what it would sound like if we had a more contemporary singer. Let's see what happens when you put Ariana Grande in the mix. Here we go.
Why? Actually kind of works. You know what's weird about that is that sounds like
sounds way more like Ariana.
Yeah, and it sounds pop, and it kind of turns the song pop. It sort of successfully AIs what it's trying to do. Yeah, but it's still uncanny and creepy and weird.
I know exactly. Like Ariana's like listening to the show, like unsubscribe.
And in spite of all, so there's clearly a lot going on in terms of the creative fracture that comes out of this, because they never work together again. They're always in different units or isolated, but they still hang out together. And
wow.
in a Mix Mag interview that same year after they acrimoniously split, I'm doing air quotes, they say, we get on really well together as long as we don't talk about music. As soon as we talk about music, we argue. So the friendship remains intact to some degree in spite of that.
And I think that their legacy remains intact. We don't have time to talk about every trip-hop group, every electronica group.
But as much as we'd love to.
It's worth mentioning that songs like, Hell Is Around the Corner by Tricky and so
Tricky.
many wonderful songs by groups like, everything from, Morchiba to the Sneaker Pimps.
We mentioned Portishead many times.
Portishead. I mean, come on, Glory Box. If you listen to one other song,
Sour Times.
listen to Glory Box, you'll be like, oh my God, how cinematic, how dark, how cool. Their legacy lives on. I mean, that's what I would see as their legacy. What do you see as their legacy?
Well, it's one of those things where preparing for this episode made me remember, I went down the rabbit hole of just listening to all the music that I loved at the time, and it doesn't feel dated. It feels certainly that tempo, that trip-hop vibe, a lot of the choices that are made with, bass and sampling, it's certainly, I know when it's from when I hear it, but it also feels fresh to my ears again.
Yeah.
We're kind of living in a time where everything is sort of recombining things that have come before. And this,
I agree.
This, to me, I would DJ at our next, DJ night at Pinky's.
Michael Gonzalez, who's a writer for Vibes, said that this music still sounds like tomorrow, and
That's
I would
a great
agree.
way to put it,
Except that, if I'm being really hard, there's so many drill rappers coming out of the UK. Like now, when I listen to BBC Radio 1, it sounds very different than it did 20 and 25 years ago. Obviously, which is a good thing. I feel like the music is back to being dark. I feel like the sort of multiculturalism that was championed when Massive Attack was making their music is now literally the source of political and social strife in the UK because, even more than it was in the 90s, many people in the UK are stressed out because they say there's too much immigration. And we've seen the what's resulted from Brexit. And so now, like, it seems even more confrontational if you are presenting a picture of the UK that isn't, just the traditional white face.
Right.
So I think we'll have to see where things go in the next, couple of years. But I think for now, we can look back on Massive Attack and say, this is the best case scenario. This is what is good. What happens when cultures, mingle and mix and throw everything into a stew.
And it's experimental, and what they were trying to do was not be hit makers. They weren't aiming for the pop charts. They were aiming to just be true to what they loved.
Mushroom said so much. He was like, when we first started out, we were making music for ourselves, and he basically said, you guys are sold out, man. You guys are writing for the critics, man. And I understand that that's part of the process because, even the movie Wild Style, to go back to that, they didn't know that they were making a seminal hip-hop movie.
Right.
He literally said, I was making Wild Style because I wanted a movie that could, be shown on some of those theaters that were on 42nd Street. He had no idea that he was making a movie that, almost 40 years later is now being held up as the seminal, this is early hip-hop in New York movie. That was not the goal. The goal was just to make a movie that his friends could go see.
So it just goes to show that being authentic when you're making something, if it's something that you believe in and that you'd like and you're not looking too much to being like something that already exists, when you're bringing in disparate elements that feel very personally of interest to you and represent your genuine, authentic loves, it will probably last longer. It will probably be more meaningful for more people for a longer period of time. And I think that this song and this record and maybe even most of this band's output, I think checks those boxes.
When I first started off DJing, I was DJing at a lot of hotels.
Oh my God.
That was back when it was really risky
Yeah.
when a DJ was like in a hotel lobby. People were like, oh, this is insane.
You're right.
They
That
would
was
be
a new
really
thing
excited.
at one point, wasn't it?
They were really excited to see a DJ in the lobby.
Whoa,
and then they
cool.
proceed to ask you where the bathroom was, which was so insulting. But there was a time when this dark sort of like, hip-hop influenced music was really on the cutting edge. And I'd love to see it, come back in that way, because I think with so many people trying to make these pop records, we'd really like to see people go back to making music for themselves and also music that is just cinematic in scope.
Yeah.
Until then, I think we have to admit that this period is over. And for that, I will shed a teardrop. Luxury, help me in this thing.
I'm producer, DJ, and songwriter Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And this is One Song. We will see you same time next week.
teardrop on the fire, fade summer.
One nice long note.
Pray her